Welcome to the Sober Nation FM podcast, where we're putting recovery on the map. I'm your host, Jonathan Sylvester. This show is brought to you by Sobriety Engine. Do you want to take your recovery to the next level? Do you want more support, community, and fellowship? Sobriety Engine is an incredible free online community of men and women supporting each other in their recovery. You can get a ton of great tips, resources, and guidance to help you succeed in recovery and in life. Visit sobrietyengine.com to join today. Sober Nation FM is also brought to you by Recover Health. If you're ready to get fit and start living a healthier lifestyle, all while supporting your sobriety, then you can learn more about having me as your own personal fitness and nutrition coach at rcvrhealth.com. And whether you're listening to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or watching on YouTube, please share this with your friends. Follow, subscribe, and leave a review. Nation, let's hop right into today's episode. Today, I'll be speaking with musician, singer, songwriter, and recovery advocate, Joe Nestor. Thanks for joining me, Joe.
It's a pleasure to be here, man. I'm excited.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm glad to have you, man. So I want to jump right in here, okay? So your sobriety date is December 18th of 2012, right?
It is, by the grace of a loving higher power.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So a little over 7 years sober now. So tell me, what were things like before you got sober, and how did you end up finding your way into recovery?
Well, it's kind of crazy. Well, things were really bad for me, but it wasn't always that way. I come from a really good background, a good upbringing. I never even partied like all the way through high school. I had the same group of friends growing up from the age of 6 all the way through high school. Graduated with a, I think 3.6 grade point average.
Oh, wow.
Was an all-state baseball pitcher and everything. I got heavy into music, and that's kind of when things went downhill for me. Got introduced to drugs at the age of 19 by my two best friends at the time that I grew up with.
Okay.
And I just kind of like took things to a whole nother level, man.
Yeah.
Like, it's weird. Here's this kid, 19 years old. I've never even like really drank, never really smoked weed like that. I probably smoked weed like 5 times in high school.
Yeah.
I never partied. And I hear my friends just one day after a show, introduced me to crack.
Wow, that's a big jump there, man. Weed right to crack. Most of the time there's like a few steps in between,
it's like a process. You kind of like slowly like ease your way into it.
Yeah.
But
man,
it was all out for me.
Okay.
Straight from the gate. And I didn't really know that I had those tendencies. I didn't know that I had that genetic makeup. So like the second that I took that first hit of crack, as soon as those chemicals entered my bloodstream, it was over.
Wow.
All I wanted was more.
Yeah.
And like I said, like my friends at the time, they were kind of like weekend warriors, so to speak.
Yeah. Smoking crack like gentlemen do.
They'd go to work all week,
Wow. Yeah.
and they had their stuff together, and then they'd just party on the weekends. Not me. I took that first hit of crack and like was off to the races. All I wanted was more every single day. And like I said, I kind of took it to a whole nother level fairly quickly. And in just a few short months, I had already lost my job. I had a great job. I was doing plumbing with my uncle.
Okay.
I was making like over $30 an hour.
Yeah.
19-year-old kid living at home with his grandparents. I didn't have any bills, so I had all this money stacked up, and I just burned through it, man. And it just took me down a really dark path. Crack led to heroin, and like I said, I come from a very close-knit background, like a close, loving family. Went to church every Sunday. The family celebrated every holiday together, every birthday together. Every Sunday, all my aunts and uncles and everybody in the family would come over for a family dinner.
Wow, yeah, that does sound
and it was
pretty
just like
tight-knit.
Yeah, man, really tight knit, loving family, and nobody in my family had really experienced addiction before.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. Yeah.
And like, I didn't want to put them through the heartache and pain that I knew I was going to put them through.
Hmm.
You know, like I said, like crack led to heroin, and once I tried heroin, I immediately fell in love. You
So,
know,
so real quick, I'm just curious, like this timeline. So, like you start smoking weed at 19, and then eventually it's, or not too long after, it's getting into crack, and then it's heroin. Like, how long for you? I mean, it sounds like things went pretty quickly, obviously, like we just touched on. So, how long from the time like you smoked weed at 19 to you're doing heroin? Like, what was that progression like for you?
so I could actually pretty much give you an exact time frame
Okay.
because it impacted my life so greatly that like it just sticks out in my mind.
Hmm.
Um, it wasn't even really smoking weed like that. I wasn't even doing that. So it
Yeah.
was just I got introduced to crack on a Friday night in February of 2002.
Okay.
That was the night that forever changed my life.
Hmm.
And 3 months after that is when my friends were like, "Whoa, Joe, you know, you're kind of like taking this to the next level."
Wow, 3 nights. It only took 3 nights for your friends to be like, "Hey,
No,
you're
3 months.
3 months, three
Yeah.
months." Okay, still,
You know,
yeah.
they were like, you know, you're going overboard. Try this. And it was a little blue bag of heroin.
Hmm.
And I started sniffing it. And that lasted probably April, May. Yeah, that lasted about a month,
Okay.
just sniffing it. And then I went straight to injecting it.
Hmm.
And it wasn't even a month after that that I had made the decision because I come from such a close knit family.
Yeah.
I started to have these thoughts of, you know, stealing from my grandparents and, you know, robbing my family members. And like, I didn't want to put them through that heartache and pain, you know, first and foremost.
Hmm.
Secondly, I didn't want them to find out and try to convince me to stop
Yeah.
because I wasn't stopping.
You
You
weren't
know, I
going
wasn't
to.
ready to stop. I didn't want to stop. And ultimately, I made the decision in the summer of 2002 to pack a book bag in the middle of the night and run away.
Wow.
And I'm not talking about, you know, running away to friends' houses.
Right. Right.
I literally chose to be homeless at the
Hmm.
age of 19. Um, I remember walking through the city that night, and I camped up. I camped out at an old church that we used to go to. Um, I slept on the side of the church that night, and I remember it clearly, like it was yesterday. I told myself, you know, I'm 19 years old.
Right.
Okay, this is only going to be for the summer.
Hmm.
After the summer, I'm going to get my life together. I'm going to enroll into college. And it's just going to be this wild and crazy experience that I tell my kids, you know, when I grow up. Um, Regretfully, and unfortunately, that summer lasted 10 years.
Wow.
Um, yeah. And my friends who I was running with at the time eventually, you know, they became homeless as well with me. And we would sleep on cardboard boxes. You know, we would use cardboard boxes for a bed, sleep on the side of the church, or we would sleep underneath. You know, I'm from Wilmington, Delaware, which is up north. We would sleep underneath the I-95 overpass, you know, and wake up every morning and just go do our thing. You know, we adapted to that street mentality, that street life. You know, it's a
Hmm.
completely different world than I was used to. You know, I was sheltered from that my whole life. But I quickly became adapted to it and learned how to hustle. You know, I started off, um, you know, panhandling, you know, asking for money, you know, holding a little cardboard sign up,
Yeah.
asking for change. Because I was young, I still had my looks. I wasn't like crazy looking. Addiction hadn't taken its toll on me yet.
Okay. Yeah.
Uh, that lasted a while. And then panhandling led to, you know, shoplifting. got locked up, did a little bit of time, got out. Shoplifting led to robbery. Robbery led to, um, selling drugs. Selling drugs led to, ultimately selling myself. Everything that I said I would never do. Every time I would get locked up, I'd serve some time and I would get out and I would just go deeper and deeper down the hole.
Yeah, keep crossing those lines. So, I mean, man, you come from a really close family. So I'm guessing, I mean, they had to be like looking for you and trying to get a hold of you or reaching out to you. What was going what was the deal with all that?
So to an extent,
Yeah.
they
Okay.
did, in the beginning,
Okay. Okay.
they wanted to do everything they could to help.
Sure.
Um, I remember I overdosed one time, actually at my real mom's house. My parents divorced when I was 6.
Okay.
So I would usually just see my mom on the weekends. But I remember it was really cold out one night and, the snow was like really bad. It was a bad winter storm and I didn't think I was going to make it through the night.
Mhm.
I remember I walked something like 4 or 5 miles in the snow to my mom's house.
Yeah.
And of course, she let me in. And I told her everything that was going on. And, my mom was in a car accident a long time ago.
Mhm.
So she had a lot of pain meds.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that. Yeah.
And I remember taking all the pain meds in her medicine cabinet
Wow.
on top of heroin, on top of everything else. And I overdosed.
Mm.
And I remember waking up in the hospital and my dad was there, and my family was there, and they were really worried, man. They were concerned and it kind of like really like just they were scared and wanted to just have their son back, you
Sure.
know.
Did they have any idea? Like, I'm sure they had like probably thought you were or getting high or something like that at this point. But did they have any idea that things were to this extent at all?
No,
Okay.
no, not at all. I don't want to say like they turned their heads, what I mean, or like just kind of like didn't want to believe it,
Right.
because like I was such a good kid growing up.
Hmm.
I was the all-state baseball pitcher. I did make the newspapers. I always excelled in everything that I did in my life. And I was always one of the most well-liked, popular kids in school. So like I just think part of them, you know, wanted to say like, not my son. My son's not that bad. He's not doing
Yeah.
those things. But I had to sit there and tell him. I was honest, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm doing X, Y, and Z." And
Hmm.
so they pulled some strings, and they got me into a rehab in Baltimore,
Okay.
and it was a faith-based program.
Hmm.
And I remember going into the doors of this place, and I did want to get clean. Like I was like, I don't want to live like this anymore.
Right. Okay.
But it was in the heart of Baltimore City. It was on a drug block, and they put me in the only room in the house that had a window to the fire escape.
Uh,
And everybody in the rehab was getting high, sneaking out of going in and out of my room, up and down the fire escape, all hours of the day and night,
mm,
scoring drugs, and I'm watching them get high.
wow.
And it was only a matter of time, you
Sure.
know. And I was off running again. And once I did that, it was kind of like it's like almost like spitting in my dad's face.
Yeah.
Almost like you don't want the help. You just want to get high. And from that moment on, my family just took a step back and was tough love.
Mm,
I was like, we're not going to associate with this. We're not going to be involved in this crap.
yeah.
Um, we're here for you when you actually want to do it.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I'm sure you've had similar conversations before. It's such a difficult thing. Like, and I was going to get into this a little later, but you've got a pretty big following on Facebook, and I'm sure you have people, and through your music, obviously, and I'm sure you have people reaching out to you, and probably even family members. And I've had a lot of conversations like this more recently. It's like family members wanting to know, like, what do I do? And it's such a hard thing, right? Because like you want to help. And I think, man, I honestly, just objectively, it sounds like your family handled it like kind of the way that like professionals might suggest. Like give
Yeah.
them this opportunity. And then if they're not ready, like it's so hard, but like you kind of have to let them figure it out.
Yeah.
Because what I don't want to happen is I don't want to keep, being this person's out, right? Like I don't want to keep rescuing them
Yeah.
and preventing them from getting I'm not even going to use the term rock bottom, but from getting to a point where it's so bad that they finally have this conclusion within themselves like I just can't I really am ready now. So do you ever have people reaching out to you like asking like what should I do about my son or my daughter or
Absolutely.
yeah,
All the time.
yeah.
I get numerous messages every day.
So tough.
Same thing. You
Yeah.
know, and unfortunately, like, from the perspective of the outsider looking in,
Mhm.
somebody who's not addicted, they don't
Right.
quite understand it.
No.
Whether it be the wife or whether it be the mother or the sister, whatever, it's like they don't understand addiction, and
Mhm.
they're just like, well, he or she has children. Why can't they get clean for their children?
Yeah.
Why can't and even it says, in the program that I work, that frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices.
Mhm.
He said it doesn't matter if you have kids.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you have a family, a loving family. It doesn't matter if you have a job that you're going to. It doesn't matter. What I mean, an addict is going to get high.
Yeah.
They're running, they're escaping, they're masking uh, from something much deeper. It's like the drugs are just a symptom. That
Mm.
like they're just using that as something to fill that void. Whatever pain they're going through in their life. Um,
Yeah.
so, I tell them all the time, not to enable, first and foremost,
Mhm.
tough love. Um, because in my experience, because I've been in their shoes, I know, and I can confidently say that, rarely does an addict change until the pain becomes great enough.
Yeah.
However that may look,
Yeah.
there's all sorts of different bottoms. It's
That's
just,
true.
when that person's had enough and they're ready to make a change, it's on them.
That's yeah. That's a good point, man. Well, and so you were just referencing there passage in the AA Big Book. So I want to ask you, so you went through this whole deal. You went to one treatment center. You weren't quite ready. It was tough. People are getting high around you. Eventually, you find your way into recovery. So, how did that come about? And just how did you get started there? What did all that look like in the beginning?
So it's very funny, and like, I don't even want to say funny, but it's ironic. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? And like, as tell my story, like it's really cool to look back in hindsight and see God's hand in all of it. Like there was
Absolutely.
some crazy master plan
Yes.
behind all of it. So like, um, I told you, like, my best friends introduced me to the drugs, right?
Right. Right.
And then we were homeless together.
Yeah.
Eventually, they left. They
Okay.
went and got clean, did
Okay.
their thing, whatever.
Yeah.
I continued to rip and run.
Hmm.
I continued to stay homeless, continue to go to prison. And like I said, that lasted 10 years, from
Yeah.
2002 to 2012.
Right.
Now here it is, 2012. I'm at the lowest part of my addiction, literally robbing banks, like,
Wow.
like some movie type stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
130 pounds soaking wet,
Hmm.
missing all my teeth from fighting, trying to rob drug dealers. Um, just completely broken and hopeless. And it's December of 2012. And it's funny because we were set to rob this one bank, and it was across state lines. It was near a police station, and everything about it seemed wrong. And I told my friends
God.
this, I'm like, this doesn't seem good. This is not a good
Right.
idea.
Right. Right.
Um, and God saved me, man. Uh, Out of the blue, right before we hit that bank, I got a call, and it was from my best friend. the same one who introduced me to crack 10 years ago. And he was in South Florida and he was clean. And he was just there to say, like, Joe, I know what you're going through. I hear what's been going on. And if you feel like, everything up there reminds you of getting high, and every person that you know is affiliated with drugs, like, and you're just thinking that there's no way out, like, I'm living proof. I'm down in Florida. I'm clean. I have an amazing life now. And you can too, if you're just willing to try.
Wow.
And at this point, like, I was so broken and hopeless. Like, I didn't think there was any way out.
Yeah.
Nobody that I had been running for 10 years, and everybody that I knew was either getting high, doing life in prison, or dead. Like, that's just how the cards fell. That's the decisions that I made, and I got to deal with my consequences now. But when that opportunity was set in front of me, I don't know what it was, man, but I immediately said yes. And the next day, I was on a 26-hour train ride down to South Florida with nothing but the clothes on my back. I was scared. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what I was doing. But it was time to make a change. And this is why I say it's funny, because I feel like God saved me that night. Because that day, that same day that I caught the train, is the same day that they hit that bank. And they got on a high-speed car chase across state lines, got caught with guns, money, and drugs. And like, some of them got football numbers in prison. At the time, I was already a 3-time felon. So I probably would have gotten life.
Wow.
But it's almost like God was like, here's this opportunity. You have a chance. You have a choice right now in your life. You can continue doing what you've been doing, or you can try something different.
Wow.
And I thank God every day, man. Every day I wake up, I look in the mirror, and I thank God that I made the choice to come down to Florida to get clean,
Yeah.
Man,
this is why I love having conversations like this, because, and this is why we need to connect to others. I mean, it's just such a strong reminder, number one, but I just love hearing stories like this. And I'll just say, I'm sure there are probably some people listening to this that are new to recovery, and or struggling with like the higher power thing. And I'll just be real honest, and I've been honest about this before. Like, I believe that there was something out there, but man, when we're out there, like you were robbing banks and all, like, dude, let's be real. Like, you don't have a relationship with a higher power. As much as you think you might believe in something, like, it's just not, it's not happening, And I never thought I would be someone to talk about spirituality or God or anything like that. But I'm with you 100%. I think I would be ignorant to look back at some of these things that I initially thought were coincidences and not think like, okay, there was clearly, I'm about to go rob a bank and my phone just happens to ring. And it's this guy basically giving me a get out of jail free card. And one thing I think is really interesting that you pointed out, it's like, you were getting ready to rob a bank with maybe some like natural fear, but it sounds like the fear to go get clean was much greater than that of getting ready to rob this bank.
It was, honestly, because it's so different and so
Yeah.
foreign. Robbing a bank was something that I've been doing. I'd
Hmm.
been getting high. That's what I'm comfortable with. That's what I'm
Hmm.
used to. Prison doesn't even scare me.
Yeah.
That's not what scared me.
Wow.
It's just getting clean scared me.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, so let me ask you this, man, because we mentioned, you're connected to a lot of people through social media and through your music, and you've got people reaching out to you like we just talked about. And what is one of the biggest struggles that you see other people dealing with early on in recovery?
Well, I have people who reach out to me like numerous times a day. I probably get like 100 messages, 200 messages a day. And most of the times when they reach out and they're struggling, I get people that reach out and say that they relapsed. I get people that say like, oh, I had this amount of time and then I went back out and I'm just struggling. And for some reason, like a lot of people, like this is just in my experience,
Yeah.
they I ask them, like, have you been going to meetings?
Sure.
Do
Sure.
you have a sponsor? Are you working the steps? Do you have
Mm-hmm.
a support group? How close are you with your higher power?
Mm,
And they almost fail every one of those questions.
mm,
They lack in that area. And just like in my experience, like a 12-step program, getting a sponsor, working the steps and going to meetings and creating that relationship with my higher power is ultimately what saved me.
mm.
Like I said, like the addiction and the drugs were just a symptom. You know what I mean? So if I
Yeah.
just want to get clean and say like, all right, I'm done. I'm just not going to do it anymore, and I continue to live my life, you know, uh, those fears, those emotions are still going to get the best of me, and ultimately, I'm not taking care of the root of the problem. You know, so ultimately, I'm going to go back to what I know. I'm going
Mm,
to continue to mask and continue to, you know, cover that pain with something. Um,
yeah.
and working the steps is what saved my life because I'll tell you right now, I feel like a 12-step program could benefit everybody,
Yeah.
not just
I'd agree with
people,
that. Yeah.
in recovery.
Sure.
Because, it gives you the tools to deal with life on life's terms.
Mm,
You get to learn about yourself. You get to learn about your character defects, why you do the things you do, why you think the way you think. And
sure.
once you've had these tools, you're able to see these red flags. You're able to see these signs like, oh, I know where that leads.
Yeah.
I know what this mindset is gonna, you know, transform into,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to lead me down a dark road, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to go down that road anymore. I want to
Yeah.
continue this road, and it just gives you the tools to kind of combat those urges and those cravings. So when I get these messages, oh, I had 90 days clean, oh, I had 6 months clean, I hear people that even, oh, I had 3-4 years clean,
Yeah.
and they went back out. It's
Mm-hmm.
the same thing, man. I do the same things today that I learned, you know, way back 7 years ago.
Okay.
I keep it fresh in my mind. Like I said, every day I wake up and I thank God because I know where I could be. I
Sure.
could be sitting in that prison, doing football numbers.
Mm,
So I just continue to stay close to my higher power. I continue to be of maximum service to others, and just do the things that they taught me in the beginning. I think that's very key. But that's one of my most asked questions is like, how
okay.
do you, it's like we can get clean for a certain amount of time,
Yeah.
but how do you, stay clean?
Yeah. How do you have that, first defense against against that? How do you and how do you keep it? And I'll just say again, I think you just made a good point there. Whether like someone listening to the show, for instance, is in a 12-step program or they're doing something different, fine. Like, I'm not here to sway someone one way or the other, but you do make an interesting point, and that's that this 12-step process or system, like, man, it can be applied in anyone's life, like even outside of recovery. I mean, and you see it being applied in a lot of different ways. Think about it. I mean, there's just some interesting concepts. Like when I talk to people that aren't in recovery, they're like, wow, that's pretty interesting. Basically like this, I'm not in charge of what goes on around me, doing things like taking, an inventory, which is basically just looking at the facts of like, and taking responsibility for stuff in my life, and, doing things like service where, I mean, it's really just, it's just kind of a cool process, whether you're in recovery or not. So I'm with you. I mean, I think there are many aspects that could really benefit and make anyone's life
Yeah.
a little bit better, whether they're struggling with drugs and alcohol or
Yeah.
or not.
Like it doesn't matter. Like I said, drugs are just a symptom, man. But like everybody I feel, deals with some type of trials and tribulations in their life. You know
Absolutely.
what I
Yeah.
mean? And these 12 steps is all it is just a guide. It's
Yeah.
just a guide to being a better human, like a
Mm,
better, productive member of society. And
sure.
we all can better ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter if you're an addict or you're just a normie.
Right.
It
Yeah.
doesn't matter. You can always better your life. You can always be a better person. You can always be of service to others.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with that, man. I really love that. So I want to jump into the music a bit here, Joe. So let me ask you, like, how much do you think music plays a role in your recovery? Like, how does that relate for you?
So when I first got sober
Hmm.
and I was in treatment, like I said, nothing happens by coincidence. Maybe then I thought so, but
Right.
looking
Right.
back, I can see it's not. But
Yeah.
they just so happened to place me in a room with another acoustic musician.
Oh, that's cool.
He had his guitar there,
Okay.
and I just remember picking up that guitar, like, and I started playing it, and it brought it brought back a lot of good memories,
Hmm.
of before the drugs,
Yeah.
before I started getting high, because music was always like such a big influence for me. I loved music, and I picked this guitar up, and I started writing songs again, and it was very different. Like in the beginning, when I was 19 years old, and I was in like this pop punk emo band. I wanted to be like the next Blink 182
There you
or
go.
the next Jimmy Eat World.
Yeah.
I was writing songs to be famous, right?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
But here I am 10 years later, and I just have 10 years of heartache, man, 10 years of pain and built up frustration and emotion and fears. And I started writing songs again as an outlet for those emotions. And
Okay.
it ultimately saved my life.
Wow.
Because in the beginning, I was very stubborn. Spending 10 years on the streets, like, you don't want to come to a treatment center and have some book smart therapist tell you about how your addiction is. Like, you
Right.
ain't lived my life. You have not
Right. Right.
been in my shoes.
Yeah.
Like, get out of here. Like,
Yeah.
there's no way you can possibly relate to what I'm going through right now.
Mm,
And that was just me being stubborn,
mm,
but the guitar and the music was my outlet. It was very therapeutic for me, and I carried that, until I began to believe in the program and believe in the things that they were telling me. Because in the beginning, like, I was very ignorant to AA. I was ignorant to the 12 steps. I didn't think there was some words in a book or some steps in a wall that were going to save me from myself.
yeah.
Um, but I continued to do it anyways. I did it, even though I
Yeah.
didn't believe in it or want to do it, and even as far, we can take it as far as like the God aspect, the
Hmm.
spiritual side.
Hmm.
Um, did I believe in God? Was I raised in church? Yes. But coming in, I was very God fearing, you know. Uh, but after a while of writing music and dealing with my emotions and working the steps, I began to see um, the brighter side of life. Things started getting better for me, and as I began developing this relationship with my higher power, and things started happening in my life, and he started blessing me through putting in the work and the action.
Sure.
Uh, I began to see it was more God loving, not
Hmm.
God fearing. Um, but music was very, very influential and very, like I said, therapeutic for me in the beginning,
Yeah.
still to this day.
Well, so sometimes we'll hear like musicians or artists say that they were way more creative when drinking and getting high and stuff like that, compared to being sober. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, did you kind of have a period where it was like I think even, if we want to keep it to an artist in recovery, I think even Eminem's talked about this. Like after he got sober, like, it was kind of tough, like rapping again and writing songs. Did you have a period where you were like, okay, this is a little bit different than before?
Okay, so that's not my experience,
Okay. Yeah.
and I'll tell you why.
Sure.
If you remember in the beginning, I told you, like, I didn't ease my way into this.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like pretty much like pedal to the metal, straight
Right.
from the gate.
Right.
So all my guitars all my equipment, everything went straight to the pawn shop.
Right to the pawn shop. Yep.
There was no writing. I didn't experience any kind of creative aspect of it. Like
Okay.
I was like,
Okay.
smoke crack, shoot heroin, sell all my stuff, homeless.
Mm,
That's it. No music involved, nothing.
mm,
I just wanted to get high.
yeah.
So that wasn't my experience, unfortunately.
Okay.
But even so, man, like today, I enjoy having a clear mind. I enjoy being able to think more clearly and be more aware. I think I'm more aware without the mind and mood altering substances. So,
Yeah. No, I'd agree. I think that's probably just like one of the many lies that we tell ourselves about, and everyone's experience is different, right? So I appreciate you just, being honest and telling, what your experience is with it. But I think that's one of the lies that we tell ourselves, right? That I'm not going to be able to do something as well, or I'm not going to be successful at XYZ because, I'm not getting high anymore or drinking anymore. Or, I don't have this lubricant or whatever it is. Maybe if someone's like, a lot of people that are hooked on drugs and drinking get into sales, obviously, because they can, just get messed up all the time and still go to work, and, but that's just not that hasn't been my experience either. It's like, really, if anything, I just removed this huge barrier that was holding me back from being even better at whatever it is I want to do. So I really appreciate you saying that was just, that hasn't been your experience at all. Now, you actually have a new single that you just dropped called Anxiety, right? And I was jamming it. And so in the song, you reference struggling to deal with the little things in life. And I want you to share in just a second what you're referring to. But when I was listening, what it made me think about is really how in recovery it hasn't been the big things like deaths and stuff like that have shaken me. It's been the little stuff. Like man, the first thing that always comes to mind, I don't know if this is a alcoholic and addict thing, but it's driving, like someone cutting me off in the car. You know? I'll just tell you real quick, I've heard more than one time situations where like I've been in a meeting and I've heard someone say that they were driving, someone, cut them off, they flipped the finger, the other person flipped the finger back, like not very spiritual, right? And then they both pull up to the same meeting. I've
oh
heard
man,
I've heard
that's
that multiple times. But tell me, like in the song Anxiety, like what did you mean by the little things?
so. It was something along those lines. Like
Okay, yeah.
me personally,
Mm-hmm.
I tend to overthink
Mm,
like everything. I'm an
yeah.
overthinker. I overanalyze things. I look too deeply into things, and I make mountains out of molehills. You know, as far as like I could take one aspect, just like okay, I'll see certain people be on my page,
Okay.
following my music, and they'll be sharing it, liking, commenting, and there'll be people that I respect, and that I'm close to. And I don't know. I think it's a sense of like expectation. Like
Mm-hmm.
I just expect them to support and follow and share all my things, and they'll drop off. I won't see them for a couple months, and they won't be sharing anything, and then I just start overthinking. Like, well, what did I do to piss them off?
Mm.
Well, why? Why are they doing that now? Like, why, dude? We were friends, man. We were friends.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And like I start overthinking, and then I start getting in my head, and that carries on and stems out to where like now I'm like irritable and discontent, and I'm starting to lash out at my family. I'm starting to be in a grumpy mood, and then next thing you know it's just I overthink everything. It's the little things. It stems from the littlest things, like you
Mm.
said. Somebody cutting you off in your car, somebody not sharing my music, or this coworker didn't really do something that I expected them to. And like I said, it falls for me, it comes down to false expectations.
There
you
you go.
And that's one of my character defects. I expect someone to do something that they say, or I expect them to act a certain way, and then when they don't, I so to speak, I get butthurt.
Yeah, I can't relate to that at all, man.
know?
So you also have a new album coming out soon called "This Is Me." Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh man, this album I think is probably like my greatest piece of work yet.
That's awesome.
A lot of emotion into this because uh, prior to this album, I was signed to a record label,
Okay.
and it was a sober record label,
Okay. Okay.
and things just didn't pan out the way that I wanted them to pan out. It wasn't. It was a lot of smoke and mirrors, to say the least. I ended up being forced to be somebody who I wasn't, all for the sake of image. I wasn't allowed to talk about my family. Nobody was allowed to know about my family for the sake of sales
Yeah.
and image. And the music industry can be grimy,
Sure.
and me as a person in recovery, it started to affect me,
Yeah.
so much to the point where I was having thoughts about drinking, or going back out. And I just didn't want that. So, regardless of the contracts in place, regardless of the money at stake, I walked away. Um,
Good for you, man.
I have a set of morals, and I'm not going to break them for anybody. Um, I walked away from it, dealt with a huge legal battle in and out of court.
Okay.
Still going through it. But I chose to be independent, and for a short period of time, I actually contemplated giving it all up. Like I almost stopped doing music. But then I realized, how many messages I get every single day of how my music is helping others, and I just was like, man, that would be selfish of me, and I was just letting the fear get the best of me, because I was signed to a record label. I did have people who did all the behind the scenes stuff. Like they did all the marketing, they had the studios where all I had to do was just show up, and they had a person for everyone, or they had a person for, every little job to help my musical career grow.
Okay.
And once I left, I was like, man, I don't know how to do any of this stuff, and I just, for a short period of time, I almost gave up, but I didn't. I researched and I learned how to do it myself, independently. Um, I went on a nationwide tour in October, which was very successful. It was my first independent solo, like nationwide tour, and it was a success. So that was like my boost of confidence. Like, you know what? I can do this on my own. I don't need a record label. I don't need anybody to support me. Like, I can do this on my own. So I wrote and recorded this new album called "This Is Me." It's not some fake, false image. I put my heart and soul into this. I have songs about my family on there. I have songs about, my struggle, songs about my faith, songs about addiction. And the cool thing about me and this album is growing up, I listened to a lot of different music. I had a lot of different musical influences. Everything from, Tupac, Biggie, to Metallica, Pantera, to Blink-182, to Ed Sheeran, I'm kind of like all over the place, even to like Luke Combs, country. So the songs on this album, it's very diverse. It has everything from, country pop songs to, rock songs to hip hop to R&B. And it's just kind of like, it's well-rounded. There's a song on this album for everyone.
That's awesome.
And I'm very excited. All these songs have top-notch, engineering and producing. The album itself, it sounds great. It's my best piece of work yet. And I'm actually going into the studio on Monday to put the final mastering on it. and we're gonna set up the release date for either end of February or very beginning of March.
Awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, before we wrap up here, man, what is one piece of advice that you'd like to share with the Sober Nation?
Just speaking on my personal experience,
Yeah, please.
you know, if you're out there and you're struggling, you know, and you're feeling like there's no light at the end of the tunnel and you just want to give up, I promise you everything that you're going through is for a very specific reason.
Hmm.
All the way down to the people who are in your life. You know, everything happens for a very specific reason. And I was taught early on that everything you do, you know, like put it into God's hands, right?
Hmm.
And later on down the road, you'll be able to look back and see God's hands in everything you do. Um, you know, and that stems all the way back to, you know, I don't think it's ironic that the same best friend who introduced me to drugs 10 years later would be the same person who got me my train ticket to get sober.
Wow.
You know, I
Yeah.
mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that they just so happened to put me in a room with another acoustic musician in treatment, who
Hmm.
now we're still good friends to this day. He lives in Ohio and he's sharing his story through music,
Wow.
doing it professionally, you know, all the way to my friend Rem One. Um, I was ripping and running with him. I was homeless with him. Uh, he went to prison in Baltimore for 5 years, and I came down here and got sober, and I never thought about him a day after that. You know, I never thought about him after that.
Hmm.
But he got out of prison and he started doing music about recovery and everything. And now um, I am his daughter's godfather.
Wow.
And he actually was just on the nationwide tour with me in October. And we're actually already have like 11 shows booked
That's
for
awesome.
our next tour this summer.
Wow. That's awesome, man.
And we're gonna take this one international to the UK.
Hmm.
So there were times in my life where I was so broken and hopeless, and I didn't see any future for me. I didn't see any purpose other than either dying with a needle in my arms or getting caught robbing that bank doing football numbers in prison.
Hmm.
You know, God gives us choices, you know, and no matter how far gone you think you are, no matter, you know, no matter how lost you are, I promise you everything that you're going through right now is for a reason.
Yeah.
It's up to you to make that choice to
Hmm.
better yourself.
That's
You
great
know?
advice, man. Yeah, and that's absolutely been my experience here. And I really love, man. I mean, you were just telling us, about, what happened, what it was like. And at the same time, I'm seeing these photos with you and your family behind you. And I think that right there just like sums up what is possible in this deal. You really are you're never too far gone. I think that's a really great way to put it.
Yeah,
So,
I actually say it in one of my songs on the new album. How many times? You know, as long as you have air in your lungs,
hmm,
you still have a chance to make it right.
wow.
I mean, it doesn't matter how many times you got it wrong.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. All that matters is how many times you get it right. It only takes once. You know.
That's very true. That's very true. Well, you can connect with Joe on Facebook. Be sure to keep an eye out for his new album. This is Me, which you'll be able to find on all major music streaming platforms. Thanks again for coming on with me today, Joe.
Absolutely, I appreciate the opportunity.
Be sure to check out the show notes for all the info from today's episode. Sober Nation FM is brought to you by Sobriety Engine. Sobriety Engine is a free online community of men and women supporting each other in their recovery. Visit sobrietyengine.com to join today. This show is also brought to you by Recover Health. If you're ready to get fit and start living a healthier lifestyle while supporting your sobriety, you can learn more about having me as your own personal fitness and nutrition coach at rcvrhealth.com. And again, whether you're listening to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or watching on YouTube, please share this with your friends, follow, subscribe, and leave us a review. Nation, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.